Hi class, it's Amanda, and for my quiz review I'm going to be doing these two questions. The first is, the text tells us that most corporations exist perpetually. What does that mean? So since I can't show you my book, I went ahead and pulled up corporations with perpetual existences, and it states when a business is incorporated, the organizers of the corporation can decide to give it an end date so that when the corporation's mission is complete, it automatically ends. Alternatively, and more commonly, the organizers could decide not to specify an end date. When this happens, the corporation exists until its owners, the shareholders, decide to end it. After all, the corporation is owned by their shareholders. For this reason, such a corporation is considered to have a perpetual or everlasting existence. So, our answer choices are, it means the corporation continues to exist until the occurrence of a specific event as designated in the Articles of Incorporation. That is true if there's an end date specified, and since a perpetual existence does not specify end date, that would not be a correct answer. Second, it means the corporation continues to exist until all of the original incorporators have died or withdrawn. No, that's also not true, because over here it even specifies the where'd it go? Until they decide to end it. So it's not ended if they've died, and someone else could also take over the corporation in the event of a death. So in that case it also wouldn't be ended. So that's incorrect. It means the corporation continues to exist until all the stockholders sell their shares of stock. That's not true. It exists with no end until they decide to end it. So the last one would be the correct answer. It means the corporation continues to exist indefinitely until it is dissolved and wound up. The second question is, in Men of Measure Clothing Incorporated versus Men of Measure Incorporated, the plaintiff attempted to apply a case called Century Homes, but the court rejected that analysis, and why? So I pulled up the case here, and here at the very bottom it talks about why they're rejecting the Century Homes decision, and it states the name Century is clearly a weak trade name entitled to protection only on a showing of secondary meaning. Under appellant's contention, all trade names will require proof of secondary meaning in order to receive legal protection. This is not a rule of trademark law. So here, our first choice is the disputed trade names at issue and Men of Measure were held to be deceptively similar, where the names in Century Homes were sufficiently distinct. That is actually the opposite of the issue at hand, so that would be incorrect. The next choice is Century Homes involved a dispute about trade names, whereas Men of Measure... Sorry, I'm at work and my phone rang, and it hasn't rang all morning, so of course when I do this it would start. So let's continue. The second choice is Century Homes involved a dispute about trade names, whereas Men of Measure involved a dispute about trademarks. And the case itself does name both trade names and trademarks when speaking of the case as a whole, but that's not the reason the court rejected the analysis. And the third is Century Homes involved a business name that used a very common word, whereas Men of Measure was a more unique business name. That is the correct answer, because it states here that it must have secondary meaning. Century is a weak trade name, and I remember reading up here that, where is it? It talks about trademark, trade names, likelihood of confusion, and I forget where I saw it, but it specified that Men of Measure was less likely to be confused, like Century Homes versus Century 21. And the third option, men and measure, involved a dispute over descriptive words, whereas Century Homes did not. That would not be true. The case did speak about descriptive words, but that's not why the analysis was rejected. So the answer is Century Homes involved a business name that used a very common word, whereas Men of Measure was a more unique business name.